Welcome to On the Go with Hopscotch Air. I'm Andrew Schmertz. With people again traveling and wanting to escape their homes, we'll introduce you to some great Northeast vacation getaways, especially as we start thinking about the warmer weather already in the cold winter. Today, my guest is Heather Ruhsam. Heather is the Executive Director of the Sailing Museum and the National Sailing Hall of Fame in Newport, Rhode Island. Heather, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us today.
Andrew, thank you for having me on. I'm delighted to be here.
So Newport has always been known as a sailing town. So walk us through what the Sailing Museum, if somebody comes to the Sailing Museum, maybe they don't know much about sailing, what is their experience going to be like?
Of course. So the Sailing Museum, really, we're looking at it as an entry point for people to learn about the sport, as well as for people who are already sailors to kind of get to revel in it alongside them. So it's pretty exciting. We did some research and recognized that people want interactives. They want to participate. So this is a highly participatory museum experience. It's hard to use the word museum when you think about it, because it's geared to be fun and have that sort of stealth learning built into it. So when you come into the museum, you're actually going to get to pick a boat. You get to select one that becomes your avatar in the museum and connects your whole digital journey throughout, and you collect rewards, you get to name it, you get to design boats. So it's really active, it's very engaging, and it's geared to be fun for sailors and non-sailors alike. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. We're looking forward to it.
and I imagine it's for kids as well. There's a section and for education of kids before they get into the sailboat.
Exactly. And kids and adults, because not everybody starts sailing as a kid. I mean, I've never sailed a dinghy. I went straight into sailing larger classic wooden boats because that's where how my family was sailing. But some kids start in dinghies. So yeah, it's going to have all of those elements and show some of the potential entry points from a boat perspective that a new sailor may encounter, whether it's in a community sailing center or even at a resort that they're visiting. But throughout, everything is created in a way that both children and adults, so children of all ages, can enjoy them. And the way we've designed the exhibits allows us to build in this really robust STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math program on top of it, that we can work with both local school children and kids across the country for.
That's really interesting. You mentioned STEM education. So kids can get a full STEM education through the Sailing Museum and experience the many different levels of sailing.
Yeah, and we've purposely designed that so that it complements what's already being done locally. So Sail Newport has an incredible program that's tied into the Pell school system. So every fourth grader in Newport actually learns how to sail. And they learn environmental and STEM lessons in conjunction with that. So what we're trying to do is, how do we position ourselves to build on that experience, continue that kind of education continuum, and also keep them engaged and excited about those different principles as they're gearing up for high school, where they actually start making decisions about what they study.
You mentioned the environmental component. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's a hot topic today.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually, I moved to Newport in 2013 to work with a group called Sailors for the Sea, which is environmental action around the sailing community. And so it's something that's important to me, but it's important to all of us as we look, especially living on an island, being so close to the ocean. So there will absolutely be elements of the ocean stewardship and health message throughout the museum. We actually have created a film exhibit where we've crowdsourced videos from a lot of different clubs and sailors across the country to show what other sailors are doing to protect their home waters. So we're trying to really make it local, but also show that there is a large impact when we all work together.
Talk to us about how this National Sailing Hall of Fame and the America's Cup and the connection there, because everybody's kind of heard of the America's Cup, but if you don't know too much, you never realize that Newport was where it was basically created.
So yeah, the first America's Cup race, well, actually I should say the race that started it all was in 1851 off of Cowes in the UK, and it was the 100 Guinea Cup. And the winner was the Yacht America. And at that point, it became a more regular competition. And with the trophy, the Americas, what became known as the America's Cup, as the prize. In 1930 was actually the first year that it was held here in Newport. Once the New York Yacht Club had won that event, it was often sailed in New York Harbor. But in 1930, with the J class, which are those absolutely stunning large boats that we are so fortunate to see so many of here in Newport, it arrived in Newport. And so throughout the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and up until the early 80s, the competitions were held here in Newport, which is why it really is among the world's sailing capitals. So,
yeah, no, some of the big names in the Hall of Fame that some people may have heard of.
Absolutely, Gary Jobson, Dennis Conner. There are so many people. Those are some of the ones that people know iconically. But what's really neat about the National Sailing Hall of Fame is that people are inducted across a variety of different categories. So we have sailors, which obviously that's pure sailing prowess, Olympians, world champions, America's Cup. But we also have technical, which are our incredible innovators behind the scenes who are creating the boats, the sails, everything that is launched the sport forward. We also have contributors, which are sometimes the unsung heroes in all of it. Sure. Our coaches, our rule makers, our authors and artists. So there's this really beautiful way of showing all of these different facets of sailing, that all these things that happen off the water and off the race course, and honoring those people. And there are incredible stories attached to all of them. And that's what's really neat about the museum, is it creates an opportunity for those voices to come forward.
Yeah, so if somebody wanted a kind of career in sailing, but maybe didn't want to be the captain, the Dennis Conner, the guy in charge, how would they get involved? What are the other things that are connected to sailing?
Of course, and that's part of, that's, I think, what's really neat about having these sort of legends of sailing as inspiration and motivators. There are all sorts of different avenues, whether you decide to go down the line of designing boats or materials for sails, or you really get into the rules side of it and the coaching. Right here in Newport, we have Iris School of Technology and Trades just down the street, and we're working with them on a number of things. But that's an amazing place to learn about digital modeling and fabrication, or classic boat building, or marine systems. So there are all sorts of ways that people can go in the sailing and marine industry without being, a captain of a yacht.
And, people think of sailing, they might think that it's exclusively a rich person's game because of the history of it, the cost of the boats, but it's much more democratized today, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that that's one of the things that's also exciting about this museum, is it's an opportunity to kind of, in a really welcoming and inclusive environment, break down some of those perceived barriers to participation and show people that anyone can sail. Our founding vision for the National Sailing Hall of Fame, that is now, the Sailing Museum, is we envision an America where people of all backgrounds, ages, and abilities can participate in sailing. Mm. And, there are lessons that we learn on the water, whether they're, the soft skills, the self-reliance, the decision-making and problem solving, and then there are the technical skills, but there's also a camaraderie that is universal. And so being able to show people that anyone can sail. And one of the last exhibits, and there's a reason for this, so it's very intentional, the last exhibit connects people to resources where they live so that they can get started, whether it's, a learn to sail program, or they want to start racing, or looking to rent or charter a boat, but making sure that people know where to go so that they can start, and finding places that are price approachable. It might be daunting to just go out and pay several $100s to take a sailing class for a day, but not knowing if you might like it. But coming into the museum, it's an opportunity to try some things out on land and say, oh, I like this. This is fun. Let's do more. And then find ways to do that.
And you're an example of this. More women are in this sport today than they have been in the past.
Absolutely. And actually in the 2024 Paris Olympics, it will be the first time that sailing there will be complete equity in male and female participants in the sailing categories. So it absolutely, you can look at the highest levels of the sport, and there are more and more women there. And it's similar to what they say about a boardroom. When you bring women into the equation, it definitely, it changes the conversation. It levels things up. So I only see it as a good thing. And I feel very fortunate to be in a position that we're, helping to forward that message through the museum.
Let's talk about the races for a moment. Are there different levels of races through the summer for the experts or for the people just starting out so they get an experience that's valuable to them?
Absolutely. And I think, yes, Newport is really a great place for that. Sail Newport has the J22s that you can rent, and you can even enter into one of the different, spring, summer, or fall series events for those races. They run a great program there. Or you can be going out with, at the highest levels, fully pro'd up boats for, world championships. So it really runs the gamut here. Not to mention we have all the kids and all the incredible camps and school programs. So I think there's always an opportunity. Not everybody wants to race though, and I think that's part of where this area is really unique too, is there are all sorts of beautiful little hidden harbors to just pop into for on an afternoon sail. It really is a sailing playground here. And that's coming from somebody who grew up in the Caribbean. And as far as a northern location,
sure.
It's hard to beat. I mean, there's always that beautiful sea breeze that fills in the afternoon, and great destinations to hop away. So even if you're not a racing sailor, there's a
leisure component to it.
Absolutely. And that's, I think of myself more as a leisure sailor than a racing sailor by far. It really is kind of, sailing's what you want it to be. It's what your intent is when you leave the dock or the mooring behind. Are you going for solace and recreation? Are you going for competition? I think it's one of the things that's really unique about the sport.
Talk about a little bit about when the kids come into sailing, you see them at first, maybe they're a little intimidated, but as they go on, their personalities sort of change and they really embrace not just the sport, as you mentioned, but the leisure component of sailing.
Yeah. And it's funny, I've just been watching my eldest nephew go through this, and he took a camp at Sail Newport this summer, and was really tentative at first, and putting these kids, 8-year-olds, 6-year-olds even, into Opties, which is one of that small kind of pram boat that they can sail by themselves, and watching them learn and watching them figure out how to handle it themselves and what the decisions that they make. And there's room for failure, which I think is really important, is that it's an environment that allows them to learn at their own pace, and to make mistakes and be able to overcome them. And with that comes incredible confidence. So I think, especially with the younger kids, when you see them start taking on, getting into sailing, there's this evolution that happens, and it's a beautiful thing to watch, and it's really neat to hear the change in their voice even when they talk about it.
And Newport is people come from all over the world to come to Newport. So you see a pretty diverse population come in there.
Yeah. And it's, as you said, when you come over that bridge in the summer, Newport has so many different things to offer, but there is no doubt when you cross that bridge that this is a sailing town. You see all the boats everywhere, boats sailing, boats at anchor. I mean, it's just, they're everywhere.
Let's discuss the National Sailing Hall of Fame and the America's Cup Hall of Fame and your connection there.
Of course. So when the National Sailing Hall of Fame was actually founded in Annapolis, Maryland, another one of the nation's sailing capitals, and in 2004. And the original vision of the board of directors was to create a museum and a place to honor the sport, to celebrate the people who have shaped it, and to also inspire new generations. And there was a really neat building on the waterfront, But after a number of years and some great programming, it was just kind of determined that it might not work. And I think that was spurred on by a conversation that was started with then Mayor of Newport, Harry Winthrop, with a couple of our board members. And the idea of the Newport Armory on Thames Street came up. And, we weighed pros and cons of it, and the board decided, let's do this. And at that point, we started some conversations with the Herreshoff Marine Museum, located up the bay in Bristol, who owns the licensing and name of the America's Cup Hall of Fame. So we have these two iconic institutions with some significant overlap in the member base of our actual Hall of Fame members. And we said, all right, why don't we do this together? Little side fact, the Newport Armory was actually the press headquarters for the 12-meter era of the America's Cup here in Newport. So from 1958 to 1983, that's where all the press conferences were held. That's where there were some ruckus times. There were some infamous lines that came out of different sailors' mouths, and some pretty phenomenal photos.
Well, they speak like sailors.
Exactly. And some may even imbibe like them as well.
Yeah.
But it just made sense to work on this together in this very relevant space on the waterfront right in Newport. And so that's how the Sailing Museum really was born, was bringing these two iconic institutions under one roof.
Where's the museum located, and is it year-round?
It is in the heart of downtown, about a 10-minute walk from everything, on Thames Street, just as you come off of America's Cup appropriately. And it will be open year-round. We'll have more limited hours during the winter, but we will always be open on those winter weekends. And the exciting news is we open in May of next year. So we're just in those final stages of creating the visitor experience now, and can't wait to welcome people through the doors.
Absolutely. And we encourage people to generally fly there because we're in the aviation business, but you can get to Newport a number of ways. But there's a cute little airport right in Newport.
There sure is.
And
it's only about 20 minutes away.
That's perfect. Heather Ruhsam, the Executive Director of the Sailing Museum and the National Sailing Hall of Fame in Newport, Rhode Island. I thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
It has been a lot of fun. I'm Andrew Schmertz, and that's On the Go with Hopscotch Air.